freedom of religion, obviously this in the US context is enshrined in the First Amendment of the US Constitution from 1791, that we are free to express ourselves in whatever form we want in terms of religion. We have the right to assembly, we have the right of religious freedom. That, of course, in the international arena, religion is the sensitivity toward religion and religious freedom is enshrined in several declarations in the past 50 years. Obviously, everyone knows in 1948, Declaration of Human Rights, where we have that right for religious expression guaranteed. We have this in the Prevention of against the crimes of genocide. Religion is mentioned. We have it in a convention for the states, for the status of refugees. We have it in the International Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination of 1965. So also two conventions, one for the protection of women and one for the protection and the rights of children from 1978 and 1989 respectively, where religion is specifically mentioned as something that needs protected religious freedom. That is one side. The other side is also freedom from religion, not just freedom of religion, but also freedom from religion. And here, of course, again, if you go back to the US Constitution and the First Amendment, it is very clear that Congress or the federal government cannot impose a national religion or national church on the American people. That is when religious fundamentalism comes into play. When we talk about religious fundamentalism, that often now coincides with ethno-religious nationalism. Sometimes these two are not clearly separable. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. These are forms of religious movements that try to curtail the rights of other faiths or the rights of secular people to express themselves because they would like to really merge their religious belief or their religious faith with political power or particular governmental structures. When we talk about religious fundamentalism, there are a number of misunderstandings, but one of them has to do with the fact that it's not traditional religion. Fundamentalism is a modern religious response to modernity, a modern religious response to modernity. Started to have public recognition at the political phase in the 1920s, both in Islam, with Hassan al-Banna in Egypt, obviously in Christianity here in America in the 1920s, but also with the burgeoning Hindutva movement in India that starts in the 1920s, and the result of which is the BJP that is currently in power. Why is it a religious response to modernity? Because they feel threatened by modernity. They feel threatened by modernity because it is secular. They feel threatened by modernity because it is diverse. These groups feel threatened by modernity because it's no longer pure. All religious fundamentalists want some kind of purity or reconstruct some form of purity. And in many cases, because they don't like the gender diversity that exists now. They like to return to gender complementarity where roles for women and men are prescribed in very conservative terms. And we could mention many more. One thing we need to realize, it is one of the most dynamic religious movements around the globe, with successfully gaining more political power in the past few years. These movements, and we find them also now in Judaism after 1948, and more recently also in Buddhism, if we think about Myanmar, become a political force we need to reckon with, that threaten actually religious freedom, the freedom of religion, as well as the freedom from religion. Meaning if you have different religious beliefs, you may not be able to express them the way you want to. And if you don't want to express any religious belief, you may have to be forced into a political system where that freedom is no longer guaranteed. So in some way, we are talking really about, if I put it in a short formula, it is theocracy or models of theocracy over models of democracy, the rule of the people versus the rule of some kind of deity or God or religious system that is fairly restrictive and wants some kind of purity, which by implication, purity means you have to exclude other forms of diversity and other kinds of people, and we immediately get into the issue of human rights, either simply violations of freedom of expression or violent forms of curtailing other religions that other people brought up with a few examples that I don't need to repeat here. That leaves us in the paradoxical situation that probably a democratic secular state is the best protection for the freedom of religion and the freedom from religion. And that will be my last note for right now. And other than to say that human rights is worth the fight. I fully believe in that.